The distress beacon cut through the cosmic void like a scream in the darkness. Transmitted on all emergency frequencies, it carried the desperation of an entire species facing extinction. The Zilani colony ship Harmony's Dream had been traveling for 3 cycles when the Kreth Warfleet found them. Commander Velix's forearms trembled as she recorded what might be her people's final message. The bridge around her shook violently as another plasma torpedo struck their failing shields. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles while her crew worked frantically at their stations, their blue-scaled faces etched with fear. "This is Commander Velix of the Zilani vessel Harmony's Dream," she spoke into the transmitter, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We are under attack by Kreth forces. Our shields are failing. We carry 12,000 civilians, including 3,000 younglings. Any vessel capable of assistance, please respond. We cannot hold much longer." The Zilani were a peaceful species, their entire culture built around harmony and cooperation. They had no weapons, no military training. Their ship was designed for exploration and colonization, not war. When the Kreth Empire had invaded their home system, the survivors had fled in whatever vessels they could find. Harmony's Dream carried the last free Zilani in the galaxy. Through the viewscreen, Velix watched the Kreth battleships close in like predators surrounding wounded prey. The massive vessels bristled with weapons, their dark hulls scarred from countless battles. The Kreth were conquerors, a warrior race that had enslaved dozens of species across the galaxy. They took no prisoners, showed no mercy. "Commander," her communications officer called out, his voice cracking with terror. 3 more Kreth ships jumping in. "They're surrounding us completely." Velix closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of 12,000 lives on her shoulders. The younglings in the lower decks didn't understand what was happening. They had been born in space, never knowing the green forests of Zealand Prime. Now they would die in the cold vacuum, never seeing any world at all. "Continue broadcasting the distress signal," she ordered. "Someone might hear us. Someone might care." But even as she spoke, Velix knew it was hopeless. They were in an empty sector of space, far from any major shipping lanes. The few species that might help were either too far away or too afraid of the Kreth to interfere. The galaxy had learned to look the other way when the Empire came calling. Another impact rocked the ship. The lights flickered and died, replaced by the red glow of emergency power. Through the hull, they could hear the groaning of stressed metal. The life support systems were failing. Even if the Kreth stopped firing, they had perhaps an hour before the ship became uninhabitable. "Commander, I'm detecting ships approaching," the sensor officer suddenly announced, his voice filled with desperate hope. "Multiple contacts moving at incredible speed." Velix's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Had someone actually responded to their call? "Identity?" she demanded, rushing to the sensor station. The officer's face fell. "Unknown configuration. The computer can't match them to any known species in our database." On the tactical display, 7 new contacts appeared at the edge of sensor range. They were moving faster than anything Velix had ever seen, their engine signatures unlike anything in the galactic database. As they approached, she could see they were much smaller than the Kreth battleships, but something about their formation suggested they weren't running away. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer called out. "On screen," Velix ordered, though she feared what she might see. Perhaps these were Kreth reinforcements or slavers coming to claim the survivors. The image that appeared made her gasp. The being on screen was unlike anything she had ever encountered. It stood upright on 2 legs, had 2 arms, and its face was covered in pale flesh rather than scales or chitin. Dark hair grew from the top of its head, and its small eyes held an intensity that made her shiver. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Federation vessel Defiant," the alien said in accented but clear galactic standard. "We received your distress call. Hold position. We're coming to help." Velix stared at the screen in confusion. Earth Federation? She had never heard of such a species. According to galactic records, there were no sentient species in that sector of space. Yet here they were, 7 unknown ships racing towards certain destruction against overwhelming odds. "Captain Chen," Velix managed to reply, "I appreciate your response, but you must understand. The Kreth have 12 warships. Your vessels appear much smaller. I cannot ask you to sacrifice yourselves for us." The human's face changed, showing an expression Velix couldn't interpret. The corners of its mouth turned upward slightly, but its eyes remained cold and hard. "Ma'am, with respect, you didn't ask," Chen replied. We heard someone in trouble and decided to do something about it. That's just what humans do. Humans. Felix repeated the unfamiliar word. That's what we call ourselves. And before you worry about the odds, you should know something about my species. We come from what the galaxy would probably classify as a class 3 death world. We evolved as persistence predators. We don't know how to give up. The transmission ended, leaving Valek staring at a blank screen. Death world? She had heard rumors of such places. Planets so hostile that any life evolving there would be incredibly dangerous. But those were myths, stories told to frighten younglings. Commander, the tactical officer shouted. The human ships are engaging the Kreth. On the view screen, the 7 human vessels dove into the Kreth formation like hunting raptors. They were indeed much smaller than the enemy battleships, but they moved with deadly precision. Energy beams lanced out from their weapons, striking with surgical accuracy. The lead human ship rolled between 2 Kreth vessels, its guns blazing. What happened next defied everything Velix knew about space combat. Instead of the massive lumbering exchanges typical of galactic warfare, the human ships danced. They twisted and spun through space as if gravity meant nothing to them, their weapons never stopping. One Kreth battleship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Then another. Impossible, Felix whispered, watching in amazement as these unknown humans tore through the Kreth fleet like it was made of paper. They're actually winning. The battle raged for only minutes before the remaining Kreth ships began to retreat. The humans pursued relentlessly, their smaller vessels somehow matching the speed of the massive battleships. Soon, the space around Harmony's Dream was clear except for debris and 7 very deadly human warships. Captain Chen's face reappeared on screen. All clear, Harmony's Dream. Do you need medical assistance or supplies? Velix could barely speak. In less than 10 minutes, these humans had accomplished what the combined fleets of 3 systems had failed to do. They had driven off the Kreth Empire. Who are you? She finally managed to ask. Captain Sarah Chen studied the alien commander on her screen with professional interest. The Zalani female's forearms gestured in what appeared to be distress signals, her blue-scaled face showing expressions that translated roughly to amazement and fear. Behind her, the bridge of their colony ship looked like something from a museum, all curved surfaces and soft lighting designed for comfort rather than combat. We're explorers, traders, and apparently today rescuers, Sarah replied to the Zalani's question. My ship is part of a patrol squadron from the Outer Colony's defense force. We were conducting routine mapping operations when we picked up your distress call. What she didn't mention was that routine mapping meant searching for new threats to human space. Earth's expansion into the galaxy had been rapid and aggressive, driven by humanity's inherent curiosity and their unfortunate talent for making enemies. The Terran Federation had learned early that in a galaxy full of hostile species, staying hidden was often the best defense. Defense Force? Commander Velix asked, her voice carrying confusion. But your species isn't in any of our galactic databases. How long have you been spacefaring? Sarah exchanged glances with her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez. They had strict orders about first contact situations. Revealing too much about human capabilities had backfired before, leading to preemptive strikes from species who viewed humanity as a threat. About 200 years. Sarah answered carefully. We've kept to ourselves mostly, built up our colonies quietly. We're not interested in galactic politics. This was technically true. Humanity had been expanding steadily outward from Earth, establishing colonies and mining operations throughout what they had designated as the Outer Rim. They had encountered several species along the way, some friendly, others hostile. The hostile ones had learned quickly why humans were best left alone. 200 years? Velix's voice rose in pitch. But that's impossible. Your technology, your ships, the way you fight. It would take millennia to develop such capabilities. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. We're fast learners, quick to adapt. It's a survival trait from our home world. Through the bridge's main display, she could see the Zalani colony ship limping along on damaged engines. The vessel was massive, but clearly not designed for war. Its hull was pocked with blast craters from the Kreth attack, and atmosphere was venting from several breaches. The ship's design philosophy was completely foreign to human sensibilities. Where human vessels were built like weapons that happened to carry people, this ship was clearly meant to be a mobile home. Captain, Rodriguez said quietly, We're getting energy readings from deeper in the system. Looks like more Kreth ships holding position near the gas giant. Sarah nodded. The 7 ships under her command were good, but they weren't miracle workers. If the Kreth had a full battle group in the system, this rescue was about to become much more complicated. Commander Velix, Sarah said, turning back to the communication screen. We need to get your people to safety immediately. Are your engines functional? Barely, Felix replied. We can maintain current speed, but any acceleration might cause a complete systems failure. We have 12,000 civilians aboard, including many younglings who require specialized life support. 12,000 refugees. Sarah felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Every human military officer was trained in refugee protection protocols. Earth's history was full of displaced populations fleeing from wars, disasters, and persecution. The Federation had made it policy to never abandon civilians in need regardless of species. Rodriguez, get me a tactical analysis of the system, she ordered. Options for getting a damaged colony ship past whatever the Kreth have waiting for us. Her tactical officer's fingers flew over his console. Ma'am, I'm reading at least 15 Kreth vessels holding position in the outer system. Looks like a full siege formation. They were planning to block any escape attempt. Sarah studied the tactical display with growing concern. 15 ships was more than her small squadron could handle in a straight fight. The Kreth they had just defeated were scouts, meant to disable the colony ship and call in reinforcements. The main force had been waiting all along. Ma'am, Communications Officer Lisa Park spoke up from her station. I'm detecting subspace chatter from the Kreth fleet. They're calling for additional reinforcements. Looks like they're taking our intervention seriously. Sarah made a quick decision. Send a coded transmission to Fleet Command. Request immediate assistance. Emergency priorities. Captain, Felix's image appeared again on screen. Please, you must withdraw. Your ships are fast. You can escape before the main Kreth force arrives. My people are grateful for what you've already done. Sarah looked at the alien commander with something approaching respect. Even facing certain death, Felix was trying to save others. It was a sentiment any human military officer could understand. Commander, I need you to understand something about my species, Sarah said, her voice taking on a harder edge. We have a saying on Earth, no one left behind. It means we don't abandon people who are counting on us. Ever. But your ships are so small, Felix protested. You cannot possibly. Size isn't everything, Rodriguez interrupted, earning a sharp look from Sarah. Sorry, Captain, but it's true. Human ships are built differently. We design for speed, maneuverability, and hitting power. We learned a long time ago that the best defense is making sure the other guy can't shoot back. Sarah was about to reprimand her tactical officer when her console chimed with an incoming message. Fleet Command had responded faster than she had expected. This is Admiral Harrison aboard the dreadnought Vengeance. A familiar voice crackled through the speakers. We received your emergency transmission, Captain Chen. Help is on the way. Relief flooded through Sarah's body. Admiral Harrison was a legend in the Defense Force, a veteran of the Centauri Wars and the architect of modern human naval doctrine. If he was personally responding, the situation was about to change dramatically. ETA, Admiral, Sarah asked. 30 minutes. Can you hold position until then? Sarah looked at her tactical display. 15 Kreth ships versus her 7. The odds weren't good, but they weren't impossible either. Human tactics emphasized speed and precision over brute force. Her ships were fast enough to stay ahead of the Kreth weapons and deadly enough to make every shot count. We can hold, sir, she replied. Excellent. Try to keep the refugees alive until we arrive. Harrison out. Felix had been listening to the exchange with growing amazement. Your admiral speaks as if 30 minutes against 15. Warships is merely an inconvenience, Sarah turned back to the Zolani commander with a predatory smile that made Felix's scales ripple with involuntary fear. Commander, you're about to learn why the galaxy should be grateful that humans prefer to be left alone, Sarah said. Rodriguez, signal the squadron. Combat Formation Delta. We're going to show these Kreth what happens when they threaten refugees under human protection. The 7 human ships began to move with deadly precision, spreading out into an attack formation that seemed impossibly aggressive given the odds. Each vessel was sleek and angular, built for war rather than comfort. Their engines burned bright blue against the darkness of space as they accelerated toward the waiting Kreth fleet. Impossible, Felix whispered, watching the humans race toward certain destruction. They're actually going to attack. The space around the gas giant lit up like a miniature star as 15 Kreth warships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma bolts and energy beams created a deadly web of destruction that should have vaporized anything caught within it. Commander, Felix watched in horror from the bridge of Harmony's dream, certain she was about to witness the destruction of the 7 human vessels. Instead, the impossible happened. The human ships flowed through the barrage like water through a net. They twisted and rolled with an elegance that defied physics, their movements so precise and coordinated that they seemed to dance between the incoming fire. Not a single shot found its mark. How are they doing that? Felix gasped, her forearms gripping her command chair. On her tactical display, she could see the human ships spreading out into what appeared to be a suicidal charge directly into the heart of the Kreth formation. Their approach vectors made no sense according to standard galactic combat doctrine. They were exposing themselves to fire from multiple directions while moving too fast to maintain accurate targeting. Captain Chen's voice crackled through the communication system. All ships begin attack pattern Omega. Let's show them why predators hunt in packs. The 7 human vessels suddenly split apart, each one taking a different vector through the Kreth fleet. What had looked like a desperate charge became something far more sinister. Each ship began targeting different enemies, their weapons firing in precisely timed salvos that overwhelmed individual Kreth vessels before moving on to the next target. The lead human ship, Chen's Defiant, rolled beneath a massive Kreth dreadnought and fired a sustained burst into its engine section. The blast tore through the alien vessel's shields and armor like they were made of paper. Secondary explosions rippled along the dreadnought's hull as its power systems overloaded. Target their engines and weapons systems, Chen's voice commanded across the tactical channel. Disable, don't destroy unless necessary. We want survivors to spread the word. Felix couldn't believe what she was hearing. The humans were deliberately holding back, choosing to disable rather than destroy. Against overwhelming odds, they were showing restraint. It was a level of tactical confidence that seemed impossible. Another human ship, identified on Felix's sensors as the Retribution, performed a maneuver that made her engineering officer cry out in alarm. The vessel literally flew inside the firing arc of 2 Kreth battleships, using the aliens' own weapons as cover while it systematically destroyed their gun turrets with surgical precision. Commander, her tactical officer called out, his voice shaking with disbelief. The human ships are moving at speeds that should tear them apart. Their acceleration curves suggest their crews should be paced against the bulkheads. Felix could only stare as the humans continued their impossible dance of destruction. Their ships moved like living things, responding to threats faster than computer-guided systems should allow. It was as if each vessel was an extension of its captain's will, reacting to danger with the speed of thought. A Kreth cruiser managed to get a clean shot at one of the human vessels, the Intrepid. The plasma bolt struck the ship's hull directly, and Felix held her breath, expecting to see the vessel torn apart. Instead, the human ship shrugged off the impact as if it were nothing more than a gentle touch. Its armor seemed to absorb and disperse the energy harmlessly. Materials technology, Felix whispered to herself. They've created hull plating that can withstand direct energy weapon impacts. The battle continued for what felt like hours, but could only have been minutes. One by one, the Kreth vessels found themselves disabled, their weapons destroyed and engines crippled. The humans moved with mechanical precision, each ship covering its squadron mates while systematically dismantling the enemy fleet. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the violence stopped. Of the 15 Kreth warships, 12 floated dead in space, their crews alive but helpless. 3 had managed to escape, fleeing toward the edge of the system at maximum speed. The humans made no attempt to pursue them. All ships, report status, Chen's voice commanded. Retribution, minor hull scoring, all systems operational. Intrepid, shield generators at 80%, no significant damage. Valiant, full operational status. One by one, the human vessels reported in. Not a single ship had been seriously damaged. Against 15 enemy warships, they had emerged practically unscathed. Commander Felix, Chen's image appeared on the communication screen again. The immediate threat has been neutralized. How are your people holding up? Felix tried to find her voice. What she had just witnessed challenged everything she thought she knew about space combat. The humans had just accomplished something that should have been impossible, and they acted as if it were routine. We are amazed, she managed to say. Your tactical capabilities are unlike anything in our databases. Your species clearly has significant military experience. Chen's expression grew somber. More than we'd like, Commander. Humans have a talent for making enemies. We've learned to be very good at defending ourselves. But how? Felix pressed. Your ships, your technology, the way your crews perform under pressure. This level of coordination suggests centuries of warfare experience. 200 years of spaceflight, Chen corrected, but thousands of years of fighting each other on our homeworld. We brought those skills with us when we reached the stars. Before Felix could respond, her sensor officer called out urgently. Commander, new contacts approaching fast, very large signatures. Felix felt her heart sink. More Kreth ships. The survivors of the battle must have called for reinforcements. Even these incredible humans couldn't fight an entire fleet. But when the new contacts resolved on her screen, she gasped in amazement. 3 massive vessels emerged from hyperspace, their hull configurations unlike anything she had ever seen. They were larger than Kreth dreadnoughts but moved with the fluid grace of much smaller ships. This is Admiral Harrison aboard the Federation dreadnought Vengeance, a new voice announced. Captain Chen, status report. Situation contained, Admiral. 15 enemy vessels disabled or fled. The refugees are secure. Excellent work, Captain. We'll take it from here. Felix watched in awe as the 3 human dreadnoughts took position around her colony ship. Each vessel was a masterpiece of intimidation, bristling with weapons and armor that made the defeated Kreth ships look primitive by comparison. Yet their crews moved them with the same impossible precision she had witnessed in the smaller vessels. Commander Felix, Admiral Harrison's craggy face appeared on her screen. I understand your people are in need of sanctuary. The Federation has established several refugee settlements in this sector. We'd be happy to escort you to safety. Yes, Felix stammered. But I must ask, Admiral. Your species, your Federation, why help us? We have nothing to offer in return. Harrison's weathered features softened slightly. Commander, my species learned a long time ago that civilizations are judged by how they treat those who cannot defend themselves. The Kreth made the mistake of thinking might makes right. They're about to learn that there are consequences for bullying the helpless. You would go to war over strangers? Felix asked, hardly believing what she was hearing. Ma'am, Harrison replied, humans go to war for a lot less than that. The Kreth just made it personal by attacking refugees. That's not something we take lightly. Felix looked around her bridge at her crew, seeing the same amazement and hope in their faces that she felt in her hearts. These humans, these unknown warriors from the edge of known space had not only saved them, but were offering protection and sanctuary. For the first time since fleeing her homeworld, Felix allowed herself to believe that her people might actually survive. The journey to the human refugee settlement took 3 days through hyperspace, with the massive Federation dreadnoughts forming a protective escort around the limping Zalani colony ship. During the transit, Commander Felix found herself in constant communication with Admiral Harrison, learning more about this mysterious human species that had emerged from nowhere to save her people. Tell me about your homeworld, Felix asked during one of their conversations. She was in her private quarters, having left her bridge crew to manage the ship's repairs. The humans had provided technical assistance, and their engineers worked with frightening efficiency. Admiral Harrison appeared thoughtful on the communication screen. Behind him, Felix could see the bridge of his dreadnought, a masterpiece of military engineering where every surface seemed designed for battle. Human crew members moved with quiet professionalism, their attention focused entirely on their duties. Earth is what galactic classification would probably call a Class 2 death world, Harrison replied. High gravity, unstable weather patterns, aggressive wildlife, and a biosphere that's constantly trying to kill everything living on it. Humans evolved as persistence predators, which means we specialized in hunting prey by wearing it down over long distances. Felix shivered at the description. Deathworlds were the stuff of nightmares in galactic civilization, planets so hostile that any species evolving there would necessarily become extremely dangerous. Most civilized species avoided such worlds entirely. But that doesn't explain your technology, she pressed. Your ships, your weapons systems, your tactical coordination. These things require thousands of years to develop. Harrison's smile was grim. Commander, humans have been perfecting the art of warfare for our entire evolutionary history. We spent 10,000 years fighting each other before we ever reached space. When we finally developed spaceflight, we brought all of that experience with us. 10,000 years of warfare? Velix's voice was barely a whisper. But that would mean your entire species is military-minded? Aggressive? Dangerous. Harrison finished for her. Yes, we are. But we've learned to channel that aggression toward protecting those who can't protect themselves. It gives us purpose. Over the 3 days of travel, Felix learned more about human civilization than she had thought possible. They were indeed a young spacefaring species, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 2 centuries earlier. But their expansion had been rapid and methodical, driven by an insatiable curiosity about the universe and a deep-seated need to ensure their survival. We learned early on that the galaxy is a dangerous place, Captain Chen explained during a tour of the Defiant. Our first contact was with a species called the Hegemony, raiders who thought humans would make good slaves. They were wrong. Felix walked through the human warship's corridors with growing amazement. Everything was built for efficiency and durability. The walls were lined with armor plating that could probably withstand direct weapons fire. Emergency supplies were stored in every compartment. Even the crew quarters were designed as battle stations. Your entire ship is a weapon, she observed. Every human ship is a weapon, Chen corrected. We learned not to build anything that can't defend itself. Even our civilian vessels carry military-grade shields and engines. Out here on the frontier, you never know what you might encounter. They passed through the ship's medical bay, where human doctors were treating injured Zilani refugees who had been transferred over for advanced care. Felix watched in fascination as the medical staff worked with alien physiology they had never encountered before, adapting their procedures with remarkable speed and precision. Your doctors seem remarkably adaptable, Felix noted. All humans are adaptable, Chen replied. It's one of our defining characteristics. Drop us in any environment and we'll figure out how to not only survive but thrive. It served us well in space. The human refugee settlement, when they finally arrived, was unlike anything Felix had expected. Built on a moon orbiting a gas giant, the facility could house nearly 1 million beings of various species. The humans had constructed massive biodomes containing different atmospheric mixtures and gravity levels to accommodate the physiological needs of different refugee populations. Welcome to Haven Station, Admiral Harrison announced as their convoy dropped out of hyperspace. Home to 67 different species, all refugees from various conflicts across the galaxy. Felix stared at the massive structure through her view screen. The station was enormous, easily the size of a small city. Ships from dozens of different civilizations docked at its ports, and the human fleet maintained a constant patrol around the perimeter. How long has this existed? She asked. About 50 years, Harrison replied. We built it after the Hegemony Wars, when we realized how many displaced populations existed in this sector. Seemed like the right thing to do. As the Harmony's Dream approached the station, Felix received a communication from the facility's administrator. The being on the screen was clearly human, but older than any human she had yet encountered. His hair was completely white, and his face bore the lines of someone who had seen too much conflict. Commander Felix, the administrator said, I'm Director Marcus Webb. I want to personally welcome you and your people to Haven Station. We've prepared temporary quarters for your entire population, with plans to construct permanent housing suited to Zilani physiology. You would do this for strangers? Felix asked, the question that had been haunting her for days. Webb's expression grew serious. Commander, every species on this station asked that same question when they first arrived. The answer is always the same. Humans believe that civilized beings have an obligation to help those in need. We've built our entire society around that principle. But surely you must want something in return, Felix pressed. Resources, technology, service contracts. Nothing in the galaxy is truly free. You're right. Webb admitted. We do want something. We want your people to survive and thrive. We want your children to grow up safely. We want your culture to continue. In our experience, a galaxy with more diversity and more civilized species is a better place for everyone. As the docking procedures began, Valix found herself overwhelmed by emotion. Her people had fled their homeworld with nothing but the hope of survival. They had expected to die in the cold vacuum of space, forgotten by a galaxy that had no room for the weak or displaced. Instead, they had encountered humanity. Admiral Harrison, she said, turning back to the communication screen, my people will want to know about the obligations of accepting your protection. What do you require from us? Harrison's weathered face showed genuine confusion. Commander, I'm not sure I understand. You're refugees fleeing persecution. We're offering sanctuary. There are no obligations beyond following station regulations and treating other residents with respect. No military service? No resource extraction rights? No technology transfers? None, Harrison replied firmly. Refugees don't owe their rescuers anything except the chance to build new lives. That's the only payment we want. Felix felt tears forming in her eyes, a physiological response she hadn't expected. For the first time since the fall of Zealand Prime, she allowed herself to believe that her people might not merely survive, but actually prosper. One more question, Admiral, she said. Why do your people call yourselves the Federation? What does it mean? Harrison smiled, the first genuinely warm expression she had seen from him. It means we're stronger together than apart, Commander. Your people are welcome to join us if they choose, not as subjects or servants, but as equals. That's what the Federation is about. As Harmony's dream settled into its docking berth, Valix prepared to address her people over the ship's communication system. 12,000 Zelani civilians waited to learn their fate, and she finally had good news to share. The humans had saved them. More than that, they had offered them a future. 6 months after the rescue, Commander Valix stood in the observation deck of Haven Station's administrative center, watching human engineers work alongside Zelani construction crews to build permanent housing for her people. The collaboration had been surprisingly smooth, with human adaptability once again proving its worth as they quickly learned Zelani construction techniques and environmental needs. The integration is proceeding faster than we anticipated, Director Webb said, joining her at the massive viewing window. Your people have remarkable skills in biotechnology and environmental management. Our agricultural specialists are very excited about some of the growing techniques your farmers have been sharing. Felix nodded, still amazed by how readily the humans had accepted Zelani knowledge and expertise. In her experience with other galactic species, technological exchange was usually a matter of careful negotiation and formal treaties. The humans simply shared freely and expected the same in return. I have been meaning to ask you something, Director, Felix said, turning to face the graying human administrator. We have been monitoring galactic communications since our arrival. The Kreth Empire has been active. Webb's expression darkened. We're aware. They've increased their raids on civilian shipping and attacked 3 more refugee populations in the past month. Admiral Harrison is coordinating our response. That's what concerns me, Felix said carefully. According to our intelligence networks, the Kreth are specifically targeting systems where human ships have been spotted. They seem to view your Federation as a direct threat to their expansion. They're right to, Webb replied bluntly. We've made it clear that attacks on refugees and civilians won't be tolerated in human space. The Kreth don't like having someone stand up to them. Through the observation window, Valix could see the human patrol fleet conducting training exercises. Even in routine maneuvers, the ships moved with deadly precision, their crews drilling constantly to maintain their fighting edge. The sight should have been reassuring, but it only increased her concerns. Director, my people are grateful beyond words for what humanity has done for us, she said, but we cannot bear the thought that our rescue has brought war to your door. Perhaps it would be better if we relocated to a more distant system. Webb turned to stare at her with genuine surprise. Commander, do you really think we'd sacrifice refugees to avoid a fight? I think your people have been generous beyond any reasonable expectation, Felix replied. But the Kreth Empire controls hundreds of systems and millions of ships. Even human military prowess has limits. Before Webb could respond, his communicator chimed with an urgent message. He listened for a moment, his face growing grim. Admiral Harrison is requesting an immediate conference with all station department heads, he said. I think you should attend this meeting, Commander. As the senior Zilani representative, your input would be valuable. They made their way quickly to the station's command center, a massive facility that coordinated defense operations for the entire sector. Velix had never been inside before, and she was struck by the sheer scale of human military coordination. Hundreds of technicians monitored displays showing ship movements across dozens of star systems. Admiral Harrison was waiting for them in the main briefing room, surrounded by his senior staff and several beings Velix didn't recognize. As she entered, she realized these were representatives from other refugee species that had found sanctuary with the humans. "Thank you all for coming," Harrison began without preamble. "I'll get straight to the point. Our intelligence networks have detected a massive Kreth fleet buildup in the Sigma Draconis system, approximately 40 jumps from here. Best estimates put their force at over 300 warships." A collective gasp went around the room. 300 ships was larger than most planetary defense fleets. "Their target?" asked a reptilian being that Velix recognized as a Thorian refugee leader. "Unknown, but analysis of their formation suggests they're preparing for a major offensive operation," Harrison replied. "Given recent events, we have to assume they're planning to strike at human territory." Velix felt her heart sink. 300 Kreth warships against the small human defense force would be a massacre. Despite their superior technology and tactics, the humans were vastly outnumbered. "Admiral," she said, standing slowly, "my people must take responsibility for this situation. Our rescue provoked this response. We should surrender ourselves to the Kreth to prevent—" "Commander, sit down," Harrison interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of absolute command. "You're not responsible for Kreth aggression, and we don't negotiate with slavers and murderers. That's not who we are." "But Admiral, 300 ships," another refugee representative began. "Will face the combined might of the Federation Defense Force," Harrison finished. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you don't know is that Haven Station and our patrols represent only a small fraction of human military capability. We've been deliberately maintaining a low profile to avoid provoking exactly this kind of response." He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. Star charts appeared, showing the entire local sector of the galaxy. Red markers indicated human settlements and military installations. Velix stared in amazement. There were hundreds of red markers scattered across the display, far more than she had imagined possible. The humans hadn't just built a few colonies. They had quietly established a massive interstellar civilization. The Earth Federation currently maintains 47 colony worlds, 12 major shipyards, and a standing fleet of over 800 warships, Harrison announced calmly. "We've been building steadily for 2 centuries, always preparing for the day when someone would force us to defend our principles." 800 ships? Velix whispered. "But that would make humanity one of the major galactic powers." "We prefer to think of ourselves as the galactic protectors," Harrison corrected. "We have no interest in conquest or expansion for its own sake. But when threatened, we respond with overwhelming force." The display changed, showing fleet positions throughout human space. Massive formations of warships were already moving toward the edge of Federation territory, their movements coordinated with military precision that spoke of long preparation and careful planning. "The Kreth think they're dealing with a small frontier civilization," Harrison continued. "They're about to learn the difference between humans at peace and humans at war." "Admiral," Director Webb said quietly, "are you saying we're going to attack the Kreth staging area?" Harrison's smile was cold and predatory. "Director, the Kreth have spent the last month attacking refugee ships and civilian targets. They've made their intentions clear. In human military doctrine, that constitutes a declaration of war." He touched another control, and the display showed detailed tactical projections. Human fleet elements were converging on the Kreth position from multiple directions, their approach vectors calculated to maximize surprise and firepower concentration. "Operation Righteous Fury begins in 72 hours, Harrison announced. 6 full battle groups will conduct a coordinated assault on the Kreth staging area. Our objectives are simple: destroy their fleet, capture their leadership, and send a message to anyone else who thinks refugees are easy targets." Velix could hardly breathe. The humans weren't just planning to defend themselves. They were going to launch a preemptive strike against an enemy that outnumbered them nearly 4-1. It was either the most brilliant military strategy she had ever witnessed or the most suicidal. "Admiral," she managed to say, "what if you're wrong? What if the Kreth fleet is larger than you estimate? Harrison turned to look at her directly, and she saw in his eyes the same cold determination she had witnessed during the rescue of her people. Commander, he said quietly, humans have been dealing with bullies for our entire history. We've learned that the only way to stop a bully is to hit back harder than they hit you. The Kreth are about to learn why no one attacks human civilians and lives to regret it. As the meeting disbanded and the various refugee leaders filed out in stunned silence, Felix remained behind. She had one more question for the Admiral. What happens to us if this goes wrong? She asked. What happens to all the refugees on Haven Station? Harrison's expression softened slightly. Commander, if this goes wrong, it won't matter what happens to Haven Station. The Kreth will control this entire sector of space. But it's not going wrong. How can you be so certain? Because, Harrison replied, humans don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure our enemies never want to fight us again. The Battle of Sigma Draconis lasted exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. Commander Felix watched the engagement unfold from the command center of Haven Station, surrounded by representatives from dozens of refugee species. The humans had provided them with real-time tactical feeds, allowing them to witness the confrontation that would determine the fate of every civilian. Under Federation Protection 6. Human battle groups versus 300 Kreth warships, whispered the Thorian representative, his scaled hands trembling as he gripped his chair. This is madness. Valek said nothing, her attention focused on the holographic display that showed the approaching fleets. The human formations moved with the same deadly precision she had witnessed during their rescue, but on a scale that defied comprehension. Nearly 800 Federation warships spread across multiple entry vectors, their coordination so perfect they seemed to move as a single organism. Admiral Harrison's voice crackled through the communication system from his flagship, the massive dreadnought Retribution. All Federation forces, this is Fleet Command. Operation Righteous Fury is now active. Remember, we're not here to conquer. We're here to send a message. The first contact came when the human vanguard encountered Kreth patrol ships at the edge of the Sigma Draconis system. Felix expected to see the careful, methodical approach that characterized most galactic naval engagements. Instead, the humans did something that shocked everyone watching. They attacked immediately. No warnings, no negotiations, no ceremonial challenges. The moment Kreth ships appeared on their sensors, the humans opened fire with devastating efficiency. The enemy patrol vessels were destroyed before they could even send distress signals. By the void, breathed a Alcarian refugee leader. They're not following any standard combat protocols. Human combat protocols are different, Director Webb explained quietly from his position at the command station. We learned a long time ago that in war, hesitation kills more people than aggression. The main engagement began when the human battle groups reached the inner system, where the Kreth fleet waited in formation around a small moon. The enemy had positioned themselves in a classic defensive sphere, with their largest dreadnoughts at the center and smaller vessels forming protective screens. It should have been an impregnable formation. Against any other species it would have been. But humans didn't fight like other species. Instead of approaching the Kreth formation head-on, the human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups that attacked from every direction simultaneously. They moved faster than anything Valix had ever seen, their ships weaving through space as if gravity meant nothing to them. The tactical display became a chaotic dance of light and destruction as 800 human warships engaged 300 Kreth vessels. But the chaos was deceptive. Every human movement was coordinated with mathematical precision. While it looked like random violence, Felix gradually realized she was watching the most sophisticated military operation she had ever witnessed. They're not trying to destroy the entire fleet, she said suddenly, understanding flooding through her. They're targeting specific ships. Command vessels, Webb confirmed. Admiral Harrison's strategy is to decapitate their command structure first, then force surrender from the remaining ships. On the display, Felix could see human strike forces penetrating deep into the Kreth formation, ignoring the smaller warships to focus on the massive command dreadnoughts at the center. The enemy responded exactly as the humans had predicted, pulling their defensive screen inward to protect their flagships. That was when the trap closed. The moment the Kreth vessels bunched together for mutual protection, the human ships unleashed weapons that Valix hadn't known existed. Massive energy pulses erupted from the Federation dreadnoughts, each one powerful enough to disable multiple enemy vessels simultaneously. Electromagnetic pulse weapons, Webb explained, seeing her confusion. They overload enemy electronics without destroying the ships or killing the crews. Very humane. Very effective. Within minutes, half the Kreth fleet was floating dead in space, their crews alive but helpless. The remaining vessels tried to break out of the system, but human pursuit ships were waiting at every escape route. The Kreth found themselves completely surrounded by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. "Attention, Kreth fleet," Admiral Harrison's voice boomed across all communication frequencies. "This is Admiral Harrison of the Earth Federation Defense Force. Your ships are disabled and your escape routes are blocked. Surrender immediately and your crews will be treated according to the laws of war." For several minutes there was no response. Then one by one the remaining functional Kreth vessels began powering down their weapons and raising surrender flags. The battle was over. 4 hours, Felix whispered to herself. They defeated 300 ships in 4 hours. Actually, 3 hours and 57 minutes, Webb corrected with what might have been pride. The Admiral doesn't like to waste time. In the aftermath of the battle, the scope of the human victory became clear. Of the 300 Kreth warships, 263 had been captured intact with their crews alive. The remaining 37 had been destroyed when their captains refused to surrender. Total human casualties, 14 wounded, 0 killed. It was the most one-sided military victory in recorded galactic history. But what happened next surprised Felix even more than the battle itself. Admiral Harrison's image appeared on the main communication screen, broadcast simultaneously to every refugee settlement in human space and transmitted to governments throughout the galaxy. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began, his weathered face grave but determined. "Today the Earth Federation Defense Force engaged and defeated a Kreth Empire fleet that had been preparing to attack civilian refugee populations. This action was taken not in pursuit of conquest or territorial expansion, but in defense of basic civilized values." The Admiral paused, looking directly into the camera with eyes that had seen too much war. "Let me be clear about Federation policy regarding refugees and civilians. Any species, any government, any organization that targets non-combatants will face the full military might of humanity. We do not seek conflict, but we will not tolerate the persecution of the innocent." He gestured to something off-screen, and the display showed images of the captured Kreth fleet. The crews of these vessels are being treated according to the highest standards of prisoner care. They will be returned to Kreth space with a simple message. The age of casual brutality toward refugees is over. There are consequences now. There are humans watching. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. "That was a declaration," Felix said finally. "He just announced to the entire galaxy that humanity is willing to go to war to protect refugees." "Not just willing," Webb corrected. "Eager. Admiral Harrison has been looking for an excuse to send this message for years. The Kreth gave him the perfect opportunity." Over the following days, the galactic response was swift and predictable. Several major powers issued formal protests about human aggression and unilateral action. Trade sanctions were threatened. Diplomatic relations were severed. The humans ignored it all. Instead, they used the captured Kreth ships to establish new patrol routes throughout the sector, their presence a constant reminder that attacks on civilians would no longer go unanswered. Refugee populations that had been hiding in remote systems began emerging, seeking Federation protection. Within 6 months, Haven Station had expanded to accommodate nearly 2 million refugees from across the galaxy. Human shipyards worked around the clock to build new vessels for an ever-growing defense fleet. Scientists from dozens of species collaborated on research projects that advanced technology at an unprecedented rate. Standing once again in the observation deck, watching human and alien children play together in the station's central park, Felix reflected on how much had changed since that desperate distress call had gone out into the void. Her people had been rescued by humanity, but humanity had rescued itself as well. They had found their purpose among the stars, not as conquerors or exploiters, but as guardians of civilization itself. "Commander," Director Webb said, joining her at the window, "I have something for you." He handed her a formal document bearing the seal of the Earth Federation Council. "What is this?" she asked. "An invitation," Webb replied with a smile. "The Council has voted unanimously to offer full Federation membership to the Zilani people." Equal representation, equal voice in all decisions, equal protection under Federation law. Felix stared at the document, hardly believing what she was reading. Full membership meant her people would no longer be refugees. They would be citizens of one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Why? She asked the question that had haunted her for months. Webb's smile widened. Because, Commander, that distress call your people sent out didn't just save the Zilani. It called humanity to its destiny. You helped us remember who we're supposed to be. Outside the window, human patrol ships moved through space in perfect formation, their crews vigilant and ready. They were guardians now, protectors of the weak and defenders of the innocent. And throughout the galaxy, anyone thinking of preying on refugees would have to consider a simple fact. The Deathworlders were watching.